Welcome back to the castle, boils and ghouls. Come on in, mind the cobwebs, and don't step on those bones. They're new. We don't know where they came from. I am the Ghost Keeper, Jane.
And I'm the Ghost Keeper, Vince.
And together we are the Ghost Keepers.
And this podcast is brought to you by castleofspirits.com. It's a website that's been around for 25, 26, something like that, years.
27.
Collecting all kinds of true ghost stories from people like you or the person behind you.
There is somebody standing behind you. I wasn't sure if you were aware of that or not.
Could be a doppelganger. You never know. Turn around.
There's
look.
a few of those.
We do have stories about doppelgangers too. And
very many.
which we've told recently.
And Vince, we have some guests to the castle today.
Do we?
We have some new guests. A whole bunch of listeners from Spotify. Welcome.
Yeah, we've just blown up on Spotify.
Yeah.
In specific, the paranormal pizza episode.
Yes.
Something about that, some sort of combination of words.
I mean, who doesn't love pizza?
And Spotify just said, hey,
you know what?
we're going to make you viral.
That's right, because Spotify also appreciates pizza.
But
So I think we should just put pizza in every title going forward, whether we have pizza in the episode or not.
on one condition,
Hmm.
we can put pizza in our bellies before we record every podcast.
It's
No.
11 o'clock in the morning.
Nah, you don't have to tell everybody that.
Well,
We have this mystique thing going on that we live in a castle and it's dark all the time. And
I didn't say it was bright and sunny. Anyway, you know what, Vince?
what, Jane?
Did you know that today we have a theme?
We have a theme. We do.
We do. It is all mall stories. Stories that take place in, around, near, or because of a mall.
You're talking about shopping malls.
Shopping malls.
Those things that are seemingly going out of style
Mm-hmm.
depending on where you live.
Mm-hmm.
We took a tour to our local mall
Yeah.
in the last couple of months.
That place
and
is a ghost town, no pun intended.
It really was. And I've always thought that that particular mall was kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And it is made even creepier by all the shuttered storefronts.
Yeah. I feel like it was almost 50% of the storefronts were closed. And then even weirder than that, when we went that day and walked through, there was a huge number of stores that were still, open and in operation, but they were closed for the day, which I worked in the mall a couple of times, throughout my working years. And we were always told that if the mall was open, the store had to be open or you would be fined. So to see this large number of stores that were in operation but closed at the time, man, that place it's going bye-bye. But it feels very liminal, walking through there. It's creepy, even in the middle of the day.
I would argue that if any place is going to be really haunted, it's going to be a mall.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people went through there over the years
Mm-hmm.
and everybody carrying their own life drama with them. Sometimes the life drama playing out right there in the mall.
Yeah.
And think of all the memories that you have
Yeah.
growing up and going to the mall.
Yep.
When you shuffle off this mortal coil, will some small part of you return to
You
that
know what?
mall?
I really hope not. It's not the best mall. If part of me is going to stay in a mall, I kind of hope it's the Mall of America in Minnesota, because that place is legit and there's a roller coaster.
Evidence that not all malls are dead,
Well, I
but
don't
just
know. I haven't
malls
been
in
there.
certain areas. Because, we took a trip 10 miles south
Mm.
and that mall was bopping. So
Yeah. Well, I haven't been to the Mall of America in a very long time. I can't vouch for how hoppin' it is, but
it reminds me of that documentary that we saw in the last year called Jasper Mall.
oh, yeah. I forgot about that one.
It revolves around Jasper Mall, a dying mall in Jasper, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys haven't seen that, go check it out. It came out in 2020. It's a fascinating documentary.
It was pretty cool. I like to watch urban exploration videos while I do some of my artwork. And my very favorite channel is The Proper People. Shout out to them. And they do a lot of explorations in dead and abandoned malls. And those are some of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, so on that topic, if anybody out there listening has an experience to share, a creepy experience that occurred in a shopping mall or a shopping center, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
let us hear about it.
Yep.
Get in touch. Go to castleofspirits.com. Contact. You can call us, email us, all that stuff.
Do it.
I have a story to tell that's just itching to be told.
Gross.
It's burning a hole here in my palm.
Wow.
And it's a story that was submitted in January of 2006 by Anonymous in the Philippines. The story is called Mall of the Dead. One of the malls in my town, the Metropolis, is a busy place. It's used as a boarding station for buses going to the city. Plus, the Bureau of Internal Revenue has an office there, so the place is always bustling during the daytime. Nighttime, however, is a different story. This is the only mall I know of in the country that has its cinema's last showing at only 7 o'clock p.m. in the evening, and the stores in the mall close at that time too, even during the holiday sale seasons. Some years ago, my brother and his friends went to Metropolis to watch a movie. They bought tickets for the last show of the evening, 7 p.m., and stepped into the theater. They were surprised to see that the entire cinema was full, with people even sitting in the aisles. As they moved through the throng of people, they could tell that there was no hope of getting any seats, so they stepped out of the theater and back into the mall. As they exited, the ticket lady looked at them in surprise and asked why they were leaving so soon. Upon explaining that the theater was full, the ticket lady paled and gestured to the bin where the tickets were placed. It only held 5 tickets, my brother's and his 4 friends. Many people have experienced this type of thing, to the point that the mall's owners have changed the last showing from the normal 11 p.m. to 7 p.m. Recently, my friend and his college classmates were walking around the mall. He noticed that one of the girls in their group would often fidget, close her eyes, and mutter something incoherent. After a while, she grabbed my friend's arm and said, "Please, let's get out of here." When asked what was wrong, she responded, "I'll explain outside, please, let's just go." Already creeped out by the reputation of the mall, the group allowed themselves to be herded out by the distraught girl. Outside the mall, my friends asked for an explanation for making them leave so suddenly. Apparently, the girl had a third eye and could see spirits. What she told them raised the hairs of everyone in the group. She said there were spirits waving their hands in front of your eyes and talking, peering into your faces to see if you could see them. And not only that, what she said next scared everybody. They did that to me too, waving their hands and looking into my face, and they were taunting me saying, "You can see us, right? You can see us." And that true ghost story is called Mall of the Dead, submitted by Anonymous in the Philippines back in January of 2006. Apparently back when malls, in particular the Metropolis in the Philippines, were still bopping. I don't know if that mall is still around, but I'd be interested in going to catch a late show at their theater.
Late being 7 p.m. Good grief. That story was terrifying.
Did it not remind you of the scene in Wellington Paranormal when O'Leary and Minogue went to break up that house party?
Oh.
The place was full of people.
Oh, yeah.
And she pulls the plug for the stereo to turn it off. She turns around and they're all gone.
It goes from this brightly lit disco scene full of fancy dancing guests.
And a party that goes on forever.
She pulls the plug to the stereo and the room goes pitch black, becomes this old abandoned place, and there's nobody there. That show is hilarious. That scene is terrifying.
But this story, Mall of the Dead, sent a chill down my spine that I don't know if I've felt the end of just yet.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what was creepier, them walking in and seeing the theater was packed full and finding out that they were the only people in there.
The only living people there.
Or the woman who saw the ghosts waving their hands in front of people's faces and asking if they could be seen. Like, that's distressing. I don't want to think that at any given time there's a ghost in my face, like trying to get my attention, or that someday that I could be relegated to that same fate. Like, that is horrifying.
Do you remember a few years ago, we had this really deep conversation where we talked about what we thought the afterlife might entail or what it could be like.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite things to consider is that maybe when we die, our body drops and we enter...
Because you're standing up every time you die.
Always. And our consciousness enters a new phase, a different phase of existence that occupies kind of the same space, but on a different dimensional level.
Mm-hmm.
So that everything that we see around us right now is only the things that we can perceive through our physical bodies. But once we're free of that, it's like kind of taking your blinders off and suddenly you're able to see more than you've ever seen before.
Yeah. Well, I think, you probably hit like a fourth dimension or whatever. And so...
Well, Rod Serling said, there is a fifth dimension beyond that, which is known to man.
Oh, boy.
So the fourth dimension, what is it? I think it's time, right?
I have no idea. But, what I think you can see into whatever dimension you're occupying. So whether the ghosts go to 4 or 19 or whatever, I don't know. Anyway, that's getting really out there.
It gets really deep because Michio Kaku says that there are 9 dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
The theoretical physicists
Mm-hmm.
say that there are 9 dimensions, but I don't know how they arrived at that number. I'm not intelligent enough to accept that information into my head. So if anybody out there has any idea of what I'm talking about, or Michio Kaku.
Do you think Michio Kaku listens to this podcast?
Yes.
Oh, I almost went fangirl there for a second, but I don't think he actually listens to this podcast. But you know what, then? Speaking of listening to this podcast,
Uh-huh.
I have a story that I would like to read on this podcast, coincidentally.
Right on.
So my story is a little bit of a cheat in that it doesn't take place at the mall, but it does mention a mall.
I think that might work, but you know what? It better be scary or we're cutting it out of the show.
All right. So this story is called The House in the Apple Orchard, and it was submitted by Anonymous in Texas, USA, February of 2001. My husband and I lived most of our lives in Utah. Nice place to visit. My husband is several years older than I and can remember a time that the city we lived in was rural. One stoplight type rural. Once, where the supermarket now stands, was a huge apple orchard. It was a favorite hangout for the teenagers of the day, as malls were not around. My husband and his best friend had driven up Mutton Hollow during the full moon to find a spot to sit and complain the usual teenage stuff. It was near midnight when they heard the sounds of clinking glass, as if someone was clinking 2 bottles together. The 2 teenagers jumped out of the car to investigate. I know, this is the same man that shudders when I tell him to kill the spider in the sink. What they found were small figures running around the trees. My husband and his friend thought that young children were out playing and decided to follow them. What they found were not children, for they could never quite catch the little people. They found a slope in the land and a house sitting in a clearing. My husband tries to describe the house to me, but it sounds more like a small institutional building. He says it is flat, many windows, and 1 single door that was lit. Around the house lay ruts, like that left by carriages. Of course, they dared each other to go to the house. Neither of them would. There's the hubby I know and love. My husband has nightmares about this house now and then. He said it was spine-chilling to be there. He's always being chased by little people. He can't even watch Phantasm without cringing at the little minions. Now I must mention, the next day they went back to the same spot and found apple trees. They searched the entire orchard for the slope in the land. Nothing but trees. Others have mentioned the house in the apple orchard that is only there during certain full moons. Some of the elderly citizens remember stories of little people running around in the trees as well. Little people gathering glass bottles to put the souls of the damned in. So Thank you again to Anonymous in Texas, USA, for submitting The House in the Apple Orchard in February of 2001. And Vince, can you guess why I decided that it was okay to cheat on our theme with that story?
2 reasons. 1, it's scary.
Yeah.
And 2, it mentions one of our favorite movies of all time, Phantasm.
There's that, but also Mutton Hollow is just about 10 minutes up the road from us. Like, this is a place that I grew up hearing about. I never went there until, as an adult driving on Mutton Hollow Road. And I'm like, this is just a normal road with really nice houses on it. This is not creepy at all. But the words Mutton Hollow will always be terrifying to me because I just always heard about how scary it was, how haunted it was. But I couldn't remember anything real specific about it. So I did some Googling to try and find information. I'd never heard about the little house or the little people or any of that. So I did some Googling and I wasn't able to find anything about that. I did put a call out on my Facebook page asking my friends if they remember hearing anything about it. There's a place nearby. It's not in Mutton Hollow. It's not on Mutton Hollow Road, but in the same general area, there's a place called Kay's Cross. It was a big concrete and stone cross. I really don't know much about the history of it, but they were always kind of talked about in the same breath, Mutton Hollow and Kay's Cross. So there were apparently like rumors of Satan worshipers and stuff at Kay's Cross. Apparently it was blown up. There was some kind of explosion. And the cross is not actually there anymore.
So are the apple orchards still there?
No, it's just a normal looking, upper middle class neighborhood.
Well, now that you've told me this story, I'm interested in going there after dark. So guess what we're doing tonight?
We're going to go slink around someone's neighborhood and potentially get the neighborhood watch chasing us. That'll be fun. Maybe they'll even call the cops.
Oh, I haven't had the cops called on me ever.
In about the last 10 minutes anyway.
There's always a first time for everything.
Hey, Vince, speaking about first time for everything.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe you had another story you could read.
Well, I do. In keeping with the theme of haunted malls, I found a story in the Castle of Spirits library submitted by Kelsey Gurnett in California back in January of 2007. The story is called The Most Frightening Job. This happened about 6 months ago. I worked at a retail store in the Sun Valley Mall as a sales associate. The store was supposedly haunted, yet of course I chose not to believe it. One morning I was opening with the head manager. It was about 9:30 and the store didn't open on Saturdays until 10. My manager had me bring stock out onto the floor, so that way we'd be fully stocked up and ready to go. I had my hands full of gray shirts and was getting ready to walk out the door when I saw a figure walk by. I stopped, called my manager out, and told her what had happened. We searched the sales floor, but nothing was there. It was really scary, but she told me that she'd had that happen to her too. Another night I was closing with my favorite manager and coworker. We never got anything done, and they were counting out. I was standing in the hallway with the door to the office and the sales floor open. I was talking to them, and I saw the figure again. I told my manager, and she started laughing. All of a sudden, the door, which is heavy and a pain to shut, slammed closed, and we heard footsteps. My manager yelled at me to get inside the office, and we shut the door and watched the surveillance video. We saw different shopping carts and things being thrown around, and lights turning on and off. We finally got the courage to go outside, me with a hammer, my manager with a heavy book, and my coworker with a screwdriver. One person guarded the doors while I checked out the stock area, which was clear. Then we checked the sales floor, which was miraculously clean. We left that night, and within 1 month, we were no longer employed there. We'd all quit. Afterwards, I found out that before the store became occupied by that company, there was an employee in the loft, which is near the ceiling and only accessible by a ladder. and that employee tripped and fell the whole 20 feet onto the cement floor. They broke their neck and died instantly. I was told that this was the figure that haunted the store. One of the other co-workers said that while they were working in the stockroom, they had talked to the ghost and carried on a conversation with it. All of this is pretty scary, and I will never work in that mall again. And thank you to Kelsey Gurnett in California from January of 2007 with that true ghost mall horror story called The Most Frightening Job. What's the most frightening job you've ever had, Jane?
Does being married to you count?
It's not a job. I don't think you get paid for it.
It's a lot of work.
Wow.
The most frightening job I've ever had? I don't think any of them have been particularly full of any amount of creepiness.
I worked in a tax office in the late 80s, early 90s. This tax office was on Winchester Boulevard, about a mile away from the world-famous Winchester Mystery House.
Mm-hmm.
And this tax office was located in sort of the back half of this old, those California houses, the hacienda-type houses, very pretty. Mm-hmm. And the tax office shared a space with a coin-op laundry machine repair service. Very specific, very niche. And we were separated by this really creepy hallway. I mean, just going to the bathroom was an experience. Anyway, it was just a creepy location. I had to work there sometimes late at night. And that's about the closest thing to a scary job that I've ever had.
Mm. Probably the closest I've ever come to working in a creepy environment was actually, not to keep it on brand or anything, I was working at a store in the mall. And to get to the parking lot, there's all these little hallways off of the main corridor in the mall, and they just lead to like these employee entrances. And it's like this zigzagging maze, concrete floors, plain gray walls, nondescript fire doors off the side, just towering ceilings with ductwork and everything. And it's dead silent. You walk in there and you are no longer like in the same place that everybody else is. You are not in the mall. It doesn't sound like the mall. It doesn't smell like the mall. It doesn't look like the mall. And it's so echoey and quiet. It's so creepy.
I remember going through there, and I remember loving it because it totally reminded me of Dawn of the Dead. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to George Romero, 1978 Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
And, that just appealed to me like that. But yeah, it was really cool and creepy, and it's just one of those spaces that has this sort of in-between vibe. Mm-hmm. The space exists as only a conduit from one location to another, as an extended exit.
And therefore, it is the very definition of liminal.
Of liminal space, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, speaking of liminal space, I have one more story to read. I'm getting really good at those segues.
Your segues are just out of control. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows
Everybody knows it. All right. My next story is called Store Fright. And it was submitted by Faith Esposito in Virginia, USA, May of 2001. I worked in a card and gift store for over 3 years. And in that time, there were many things that happened that makes me believe in ghosts. This was about 3 years ago, soon after Christmas, when the major incidents occurred. We had just switched all our cards and merchandise from Christmas to Valentine's Day, and at 10 p.m., me and my coworker set the alarm and walked out the door. It was a Saturday night, and I went to a friend's house. Around 1 a.m., my pager went off. It was the mall security number. I called them back, and they said I needed to come back to my store because our alarms were going off. I went to the store thinking that balloons we put up earlier that day might have set off the alarms. I went in and pulled the balloons down, called our store security team, and went to reset the alarm. When I set it, the alarm defaulted, saying there was motion in the front of the store. I hit clear and set the alarm again. It defaulted again, saying motion was detected. It was about 1:30 a.m. I was alone and getting scared. I called our security team and they said they would override the alarm. I took one last look around and the store looked normal. The next day, when I came in to open the store, there was a stuffed animal sitting on the ground with a box of chocolate on its lap, an I love you card beside it, and a chocolate rose in front of it. It had not been there the night before. When I walked behind the cash wrap, I jumped back in surprise. The step ladder had been opened and set across the register area so that the only way around it was to close it, and all the balloons I had pulled down the night before were popped. The register keys were laying on the floor, and the drawer they were kept in was open. I hightailed it out of there, locking the door behind me, and got a security guard. We opened the store and went through it together. There was no one there. The only way in and out of the store was if you had a key. The back door would only open with a key, or the alarm would go off. And the only way to turn off the alarm was to put your key in. It was a fire alarm door, which we checked and worked. I called the alarm company and they said the only time the alarm was cut off during the night was when my code was entered at 1:16 a.m. and reset in override at 1:49 a.m. Many times before and after that night, if we were working late, we would hear footsteps in the storage alcove above our back room. You could go upstairs and no one would be there. Sometimes you would be upstairs and hear footsteps on the stairs, and when you looked, no one would be there. There was also this one wall that every time I was near, someone would come up to me and touch my arm. Only when I turned around, I was alone. When I told my current boyfriend the story, he laughed at me and told me I was crazy. But he works security in the mall now, and sometimes has to work overnight. He believes me now, because many nights he has seen things move in the store or has heard voices. One night, 6 of us were putting up a barricade on a storefront that was being remodeled, and we heard one of the motion singing fish go off, only no one was around. I'm not sure why, but that store is definitely haunted. Thank you again, Faith Esposito in Virginia, USA, for submitting Store Fright in May of 2001.
I have a theory.
Let's hear it.
The only way in, without setting off the alarm, was with a key.
And the only way out was with that same key.
I think it was Quiz Kid Donnie Smith from the movie Magnolia going in there to try and get the safe so he could have corrective oral surgery.
My initial thought was drop ceiling.
You mean somebody getting in through the drop ceiling?
Yeah, going in through drop ceiling. But I feel like the motion detector was going off while she was still in the store. And she said there was no one there. And then they finally got it taken care of and it didn't go off again. But none of those things that she saw the next morning were there that night. So...
motion detection technology, and when was this story submitted?
2001.
Maybe it wasn't even as good as it is now, and it could have just, it could have been a ghost too. I mean,
exactly.
We're telling
That's
ghost
kind of the point
here.
of the story, is that it was a ghost.
And why is it haunted? I mean, any number of reasons.
See, because a drop ceiling could potentially explain that, but why would somebody break into a card store just to freak someone out with a teddy bear and a stepladder and then 86? But then also there's evidence in the story that it was a ghost, the footsteps in the alcove above the storage area, and they go up there and then they hear the footsteps below them. So that's a little less, somebody breaking in through the drop ceiling.
I really like that story. And for another reason, another reason that I like that story is because it totally gives me a new idea for a themed show.
Oh.
Security guard horror stories,
Yes.
security guard ghost stories, whatever.
Let's do it. So you guys listening, let's get a jump on that. If you are a security guard, if you were a security guard, if you know one, and there's a creepy story, get that submitted. Maybe we'll read it on our next episode.
Yeah. So go to castleofspirits.com, click the submit button or the contact button. There's many ways to get in touch and share your story with us.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of getting in touch with us, we had a comment recently on one of our reels on Instagram from Kelly Hunt Harris. This was in response to the reel where we shared the story about the kid who comes home from school and hears his mom call out to him, but she's actually not there.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly says, in 1995, I was home at night with my two youngest children, Emily, 3, and Alex, 6. My oldest daughter, Allie, 9, and her father were at my in-laws' house some 25 minutes away, but were expected home soon. We were in the bathroom brushing teeth after having just watched an Unsolved Mysteries episode about the ghost of a woman who had drowned in the early 1900s in a lake near a hotel, and her ghost would reappear at times. Sounds like an awesome episode. I don't know if I've ever seen that one.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that one.
But we try to watch Unsolved Mysteries nightly.
Yeah, we saw the Resurrection Mary episode last night. That was cool. Anyway.
Kelly goes on. She says, when I turned the water off, we heard the usual sound of the key entering the lock and the sliding glass door opening. Allie called out, Mom? Emily, who had been sitting on the counter, jumped down and happily said, Allie's home. She runs around the corner to greet them, then immediately comes back and says, they aren't there. I said, what do you mean they're not there? I went around the corner into the living room, and nobody was there. Immediately, I called my in-laws' house and asked if my husband was there and was told, yes, he's right here. They're just leaving. 25 minutes later, they arrived home. I've had many unexplainable experiences just like this, and I have come to realize that any talk of ghosts manifests an immediate reaction of some kind. So, Kelly, if you're listening to this, you're in trouble because we just told the ghosts your name and your story. And tell us more stories, Kelly. I've never experienced that before. I mean, I've heard strange sounds in my house and, you know, growing up as a kid, getting freaked out at all the weird sounds that happened during the day, but I never spoke to somebody who wasn't there.
I do remember one time, though, you thought that I had come home. You were You were in the basement.
Yeah, that was in our old house.
Yeah. And you were sitting down there watching TV, and you heard somebody walking around upstairs.
And I called out to you, and there was nothing.
Yeah. So you went and looked in the garage, and the car wasn't there. So then you called me at work and said, are you at work? Yeah. Did you come home? No.
And then I think I said, I'll be waiting for you outside when you get home because I'm not comfortable being here anymore.
We used to have creepy things happen at that house every once in a while. But
and the
not
house
this house.
And the house was not even very old. To the best of our knowledge, nobody ever died in that house. But that's just the thing, is I don't believe that you necessarily have to die or have to have a death in the house in order for a house to be haunted.
Yeah.
I think that it can come with the land. I think it can come with maybe a phenomenon of a wandering spirit that sees an open door and says, oh, well, this looks good for me now. I'll stick around here for a couple of centuries.
And I think that people and their energies can kind of be radio antennas for spirits too. I think there's a lot of different factors that go into, you know, experiencing something. I don't think it's as cut and dry as somebody died here or somebody is buried here.
And on that note, we hear the
musical notes.
The strains of music coming down the hall, which means it's time for us to feed the ghosts. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Castle of Spirits True Ghost Stories podcast. While we have our own episodes here right into the microphones.
That's true.
We're getting a growing number of reviews on Apple Podcasts
and Spotify.
If you listen to us on either of those or iHeartRadio or whatever, leave us a review, please, because because every one that we get brings us closer to world domination. I mean, it actually helps people discover this podcast. It recommends it to other people.
And submit your stories to us, because we can only continue to do this podcast with batches and batches of fresh ghost stories. Speaking of ghosts, it's my turn to feed them, and I guess I'll start with the bones in the entryway.
Oh, those are mine. Those are leftovers. I'm having them for lunch.
Gross.